What's up, Wesley?
Welcome back to the Charleston Wesley podcast, where we make ministry available on the go. I'm Ava, and I'm the Wesley worship intern.
And I'm John, and I'm serving as the director of the Wesley Foundation. We have a very special guest joining us for this conversation. It is Reverend Susan Leonard. Woo! How are you, Susan?
I'm doing great. How about you, John?
Doing well, doing well. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and tell the listeners?
Yeah, certainly. I'm glad to be here in the conversation today. I presently serve as a United Methodist pastor at Bethel United Methodist, a couple of streets over on Calhoun and Pitt. I'm in my 7th year there, but before that, lots of ministry, starting out in Greenville and then campus ministry at Furman, and all the way through until life brings me here. So it's good to be in the Holy City and do ministry in the Low Country now.
It is. That's a good place to be. I didn't realize you'd been at Bethel for 7 years.
Yeah, how about
which,
that?
I guess that makes sense, because you came to Bethel when I was at CFC, which means that, so I think that
like we're all getting older,
yeah,
maybe?
that may be the fact that's sitting with me more. But I have a question for y'all.
Yeah.
It's the Christmas season, right? It's the Advent season, I know, but a big part of it, and no, this is not what we Christians emphasize, but gift giving is a part of the Christmas season, right?
Yeah.
And we can get into the commentary, commercialism, all that, but that's not really the question. The question that I have is, what is a very dear Christmas gift that you got in your past? Doesn't have to be your favorite.
No.
But
I get that. In my family of origin, so my mom, dad, sister, me, my mom and dad kind of shaped our family to think about heart gifts.
Okay.
Now that might have been so that we didn't give, an iron or a blender or a waffle maker to my mom for Christmas. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the origin of that was, even if you bought something, the most important gift would be the heart gift, which would be something that you made.
Oh.
So when I was younger, that might be, a pane of rock with, love on it or something when you're 5. But it might be something that was cross-stitched, or it might, Dad would work with wood, and so he might make something. But we were raised to think about heart gifts, which meant a gift that couldn't be bought, or a gift that was more of an experience. So in my own family of origin, or now in the family that I am blessed to create, I have 3 now young adult children. We still try to do that. Yeah. Like that is one of those traditions that get, there are wishes that, that we all make. I wish for, what is it you need? Can you give me some wishes? Yeah. Give me a handful of wishes to help guide. But at the end of the day, it really is about, it's about a heart gift, something that is thoughtful, meaningful. I'll tell you my most recent heart gift.
Okay.
My son was married in September to Danielle, and they were...
Shout out to Danielle.
Yeah. So they, on the eve of their wedding, they gave me a gift, which I thought was really sweet. What might this be? And it had a letter from my son, so in his handwriting and his letter. But now my daughter-in-law, his now wife, she was the one that picked it out. So together, he gave the gift with words. She wrapped up the gift. And it is this, those of you who are listening can't see it, but I unwrapped it when I got back to my room, and it had 3 jewels on it, a bracelet, a gold bracelet with 3 little jewels. And I thought, that's really pretty. There's this green one and this blue one and this darker green. It's really pretty. And it had a little card inside of it that was from the man, from the custom jeweler that did it. And it said something about, always travel with your bathing suit and your towel in the back of your car, some sort of adventure stuff. And I was like, oh, this is like, they travel all the time and just get ready to go. I always say I'm riding the magic carpet when I'm with them. And I just hop on the back and we go. So I thought, but like, I don't understand maybe these are colors of the water, maybe bathing suit, towel, maybe these are water. And the more I tried to think about that in light of heart gifts, right, in light of meaningful, purposeful gifts, I'm like, this has got to be a heart gift. Like, it's got to be a heart gift. And then it dawned on me, this is Jonathan's birthstone, my birthstone, and her birthstone.
Oh my God!
So the next day, on the wedding day, I took the box and asked Danielle to put it on me. To put it to put it on my. So anyway, that's my most recent heart gift.
Yeah.
It just means something, right? It's beyond the value of a price tag. It's something made or thoughtful or that connects us somehow.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Better than what I was going to say.
I was going to say socks. I have a reason. My little brother and I, not done a ton of gift giving because we were similar, not super far in age. We're 3 years apart, so... But as I got older, I kind of sometimes like to pick him out just something random. But it's not every holiday, just random birthdays or Christmases. Maybe I'll get him something. But I guess being the older sibling, I was under the understanding that I was never to get a gift from him as he's my younger brother. And just, I just knew that just wasn't his thing. And last Christmas... we had finished opening up everything, and Rick is like, wait 1 second, and he ran to his room, and he pulled out these pair of $8 fuzzy socks from Walmart, and he said, I bought all my friends' gifts, and I had $8 left over, and I got him some socks, so I thought about you, and I don't know, that being I guess my first gift from him is memorable.
Cool.
So,
That's great. That's great.
I'll offer 2 answers. One of them is really sweet, and then the other is just awesome. Have you all seen the Christmas Story with the Red Ryder BB gun and how he is constantly asking for that? That was what I did for an electric guitar one Christmas, and I got it, and it was epic, and it was awesome. So that's up there, but I guess the more meaningful, sentimental one. I knew that I wanted to marry Hannah. And I told my parents that I was planning to end 2020 or 2019 engaged to Hannah. And I explained that to them. I was like, listen, that's just what I'm going to do. And and I gave them 6 months to process because they don't do well with big change. And getting married young is not something that my family does. Hannah picked out a very cheap ring, and I was like, this is the woman of my dreams. And I was like, thank God. And then I told my mom about it, and my mom was like, you can't get her that cheap ring. Oh, my goodness. And so then my mom dragged me to this jewelry store, and we looked at these rings, and I was like, because it was just, oh, my goodness, so expensive. And anyway, that night, my mom just, came in the living room, and she's like, I think I want you to have Nana's engagement diamond.
Oh, my gosh.
And so she gave me the diamond of my grandmother's engagement ring, and then I got it fitted into a setting, and that was just and it was kind of a funny moment because my mom was really emotional about it and everything like that, and then she's like, well, I don't really know why I need it, what other reason would she need it, and so that's Hannah's diamond, and her engagement ring is my grandmother's engagement diamond, so.
Well, that was a gift to Hannah. That's a heart gift, right?
Yeah,
but it was a heart gift from your mom to you too.
Yeah, well, it was a weird, it's a weird family tree of gifts because it's from my grandfather to my grandmother to my mom to me to her from my mom.
Right.
Yeah, it's everyone's involved. So yeah.
Sort of a legacy gift almost.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I honestly that hadn't dawned on me until just now, verbalizing that whole giving tree, if you will.
You should write a book.
Maybe. It's a catchy name. Yeah, I mean, I think that the gift giving is all fun and stuff, and there's always a lot of chaos, especially with kids, and ripping the wrapping paper and all this stuff. But then I feel always afterwards, there's just this moment of peace on Christmas morning, and I love a good segue. But today we're going to talk about peace. We're going to talk about what's up with peace in the Advent season and also in the Nativity story. And Ava, I'm going to hit you with the first question, and then Susan, you're going to point out where Ava's wrong. So Ava, how would you define peace, and do you think it's something different from feeling calm?
Yeah. Peace is a sense of like, everything's gonna be alright. What's that song?
Every little thing is gonna be alright.
Yeah,
Bob Marley. Yeah.
That idea, and I think is different from calm, because I think calm, I relate to outward things, like a room's calm or the sea's calm, but peace to me is inner, like it's inside.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of what I would say.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
Yep.
there's no corrective there at all. I think
Yeah.
that's very insightful, Ava.
Yes.
Because externally, life can be crazy, chaotic, joyful, sad, and those are external. And sometimes peace is fostered by a sense of calm on the outside. You know, like here's candles burning, the lights are down low, there's fires crackling in the fireplace, your, mulled cider in your hand. I mean, all those can feel at peace, and you can feel at peace both externally and internally. But the point you make is that peace can come when things are externally peaceful, but there's also the possibility that peace can reside even when things are not calm on the outside, which I think is a very insightful thing.
Yeah, and what I think that a lot of people do identify peace as like this stillness, right? But interestingly, whenever I've been thinking of peace, like I always think of like I got peace like a river, and like a river doesn't hold still, And I think that there's something about this kind of divine peace that we're talking about is that like it persists despite the movement of the world, right? It is ever present. It is perseverant despite all the things that are moving around us, and we kind of move with it because that's just how life goes. Is it just kind of picks us up and takes us, but it's something within us that we can hold on to. Do you think that this is like some like, and you kind of alluded to this, Susan, with, you can kind of set the scene to make it more peaceful, right? But do you think from like a faith point of view, are there certain practices that we can do to I guess position ourselves to be more peaceful? Or do you think that it is something that simply we just ask for and hope that God gives it to us, or where is all that mystery?
Yeah. No, I think that that Jesus longs to give us peace. It's helpful to remember that peace, spoken in the language of Jesus, Hebrew, was shalom. So it wasn't 5 letters peace, but it was shalom, which meant not an absence of, but the presence of. So peace, in the way that moderns think about it, is often the absence of war, the absence of conflict, the absence of sadness, the absence of chaos, whatever, the absence of. And to hear Jesus talk about it, Jesus will say, my peace I give you, the shalom, the fullness of, not the absence of, the fullness of, which is, it's worth thinking about what's the, not if it's not the absence of, then what is it the presence of?
Yeah.
And I think that's the faith-based part of it. Yeah. It's the presence of God, not the absence of conflict, that grounds us, that gives us an anchor, our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. Like it's the holding point, it's the anchor point, and it's not the absence of, but the presence of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in that, for some of our listeners, I feel like we throw around a lot of words in church that we just never explain. But, you know, with prayer, for example, there are forms of prayer that are grounding. I mean, there's centering prayers and grounding prayers that invite the addition of God into the space, right? Like kind of working with what you just said about like inviting shalom, right? And you know, I do think that there are some things that we can do to position ourselves in that sense of like with the centering prayer. I think devotionals, journaling is a great way to introduce. I think like worship music is a great way to just introduce Christ into the car with you.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different ways that we can invite kind of peace.
Right.
But I do think that there's another flip side of it, that we can also kind of identify what is taking away our peace, you know, and maybe trying to be a little more calculated and maybe removing some distractions, removing some things that maybe aren't the best for our own peace. Because, like, for college kids, holy smokes, like, when I sit down and they're telling me, like, oh, my goodness, I just feel like I'm so overwhelmed. And it's like, well, you're doing 5 full-time jobs. Like, that's what you're doing right now. Yep. And you volunteered for 3 of them. Like, you know, I think that, like, peace is kind of this, it's this interesting intersection of surrendering and also focusing, you know. It's almost like a juxtaposition in that sense.
I would add one more word to that, John. I think surrendering, focusing, and resting. Right?
Yeah.
So surrendering is, I think that word is often misused, right? So surrender means I've lost, you've won, often. And I think surrender, from a faith perspective, is I'm holding this as mine, but I choose to give it to you as yours. You know, like I surrender my will, or I surrender these worries, or I surrender the future that I cannot control. I mean, I surrender, offer over, and with that is a resting in, you've got this, God. I'm gonna, you've got this, and that's the resting in. You know, the surrendering, focusing, resting, which I think takes us back to that grounding place. It's not circumstantial. It's God does have this. God does have this circumstance. God does have this life of mine. God does have this world. Yeah, and to realize that in back, ultimate reality is good. Like in back of all things is God, and God is. The ultimate reality is goodness and mercy and love. And if I can surrender to that, you know, if I can rest in that, if I can focus on that, I can find some peace. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, yeah.
It does, but my follow-up question to both of y'all is that easy for you? Yeah, right. Because I think we all know what to do. It's whether or not it's easy. So, is it easy, and why or why not?
For me, it's definitely not easy. I just think I'm a type of person that gets overwhelmed pretty easily, and I think I can actually deal with feeling overwhelmed in an okay way, but that doesn't make it not feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I know to be productive, I know to get stuff done, but I still feel it. And so I think we've talked about like priorities a lot on this podcast before, but some of that comes from that, like my priorities can sometimes get off from what they probably should be, and I can get overwhelmed with other things that keep me from a sense of peace, like school, for example. At the end of the day, there's sometimes a test where you just gotta give it your best. Like, that's all you can give. But like, I can probably get a little bit too caught up in like, well, no, what if I did this for one more hour. Did this, like,
Yeah.
thinking through every single possibility or overthinking. Overthinking, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Overthinking keeps me from being peaceful, I think, sometimes. But yeah.
I love that because I think it complements kind of what I think the biblical invitation is, that psalm, that line from the psalm, that be still and know that I am God. So if God is ultimate reality, and God is good, God is loving, God is just, God is kind, God is like we find our home in God. If I can be still and know that God is God, then I can find some measure of grounding and peace in that.
Yeah.
But you have to be still to get there, right?
I think that's my problem, is I just am like, no, that's just going to take too much time, And then it's such a feedback loop, because it's like, oh, well, I got to do all these things, and then I can get some rest, and then I can feel at peace.
Right.
And then we never get there, and it's like, no, do the peace first. Other things will, and a little bit of that's like ego, just being like, oh, I have to deal with all these things. I can't let someone else deal with it. It can't wait until next week. I think overworking is a massive issue with college students.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely something I struggle with,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a massive issue with college students, which I don't blame y'all, because like y'all are kind of told that that's what's admirable and what you need to be doing in this season. But yeah, I mean, I think when you kind of look at that to-do list, and then all of a sudden, Pastor Susan here is talking about sitting down and calming yourself and focusing in on God. It's like, well, when am I going to find the time to do that?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a tough thing, but it is a part of Advent, right? Peace is a theme of Advent. It is one of the four, and it's an important one, and it's something that I think is thrown around a lot in the songs. I've been kind of thinking about like some of the Christmas songs that we sing, and just like, I don't know, just like peace is one of the ones that I hear a lot. I feel like I don't hear love very often in Christmas songs, but I hear about like peace. And so, Susan, to kind of pass it over to you, I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about the role of peace in the Nativity story, or in the Advent season, or both, and lift up some observations, and hopefully the three of us and whoever listens will know a little bit more by the end of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to think about that just the biblical through line of peace that comes from Old Testament all the way to New. When you think about the Isaiah passage that we hear sung in Handel's Messiah, or the words about mighty God, everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Wonderful Counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Like that crescendos in the Messiah, and it's found in all our Advent readings. And it's the prophets foretelling that God will send this one that will be the Prince of Peace. So there's a quality about the Messiah that is going to be marked by peace. And so then if you follow that, you're on the lookout for someone whose life embodies peace, apart from circumstances. Then when you get over to the Gospels that record the life of Jesus, you think about Luke is one of our favorite places, right? Luke 2 is the Christmas story. But if you back it up just a little bit, then John the Baptist always precedes Jesus. And so the birth of John the Baptist comes. So if you think about the story in Luke 1, before you get to the shepherds and in the fields watching over their flocks by night in Luke 2, then there's Elizabeth, the mother of John, Zachariah, the father of John. Elizabeth is going to sing. Mary is going to come to kind of hang out while she's pregnant with Elizabeth, and she's going to sing. Yeah. And then Zachariah, he's kind of the last one that, like, everybody's going to try to give word to this, the power of what's going on that they already know somehow is a defining moment. And here's what Zechariah says, because it echoes peace before Jesus is even born, right? So in Zechariah's prophecy, which is chapter 1, and you, child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go before the Lord to prepare the way. So he's talking about his son, John, to give knowledge of salvation to his people by the forgiveness of their sins. And by the tender mercies of our God, the dawn from on high will break upon us, which is Jesus, the dawn from on high, light in the world. The dawn from on high will break upon us to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. So the child grew and became strong in spirit, and he was in the wilderness until the day he appeared publicly in Israel. So here's Isaiah, centuries before, saying a mark of God's Messiah will be, he will bring peace. He will be guided by peace. He will hold peace. He will lead us in the way of peace. And then Zechariah says, John's going to be the forerunner of this, but then the dawn is going to break, light's going to shine in the darkness. This one is going to come to guide our feet in the way of peace. I think this is powerful. If we read through that too quickly, we'll forget that Jesus is not just going to come and be our peace. Jesus is going to guide our feet in the way of peace. Like, so peace is going to be our way too. Like, peace is going to be our way too. And so it's not just, I'm going to come and unilaterally, peace on all.
Everything. Yeah.
But Jesus is going to come and model peace, anchored to God, guided by God, centered in God, knowing ultimate reality, living in that surrendered, focused, resting way that gives Jesus peace, and is going to guide our feet in the way of peace. So peacemaking is going to be peace keeping, peacemaking, peace living is going to be our way too. So you follow, the angels who say peace on earth, goodwill to all, and there's Jesus. So if you keep following, I'm just doing this big arc, Isaiah over to Zechariah, over to the angels who declare peace on earth, and then Jesus, you look at his last night before he would be taken off, handed over to be killed. He's with his disciples. It's John 14. And he tells them about serving, about servant leadership, washes their feet, all of that. And then he says, this is going to be what's happened, what's going to happen. My peace I give you. My peace I leave with you. He's saying that after he's just told them that he's about to be handed over and executed. So peace is not circumstantial. Right? He's going to show and have peace, even though, my peace I give you, my peace I leave with you. Not as the world gives, do I give unto you. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not let them be afraid. Peace. Which, how can you do that? But that's that they go to the garden. There's some don't fall asleep kind of conversation that happens. But really, these words, this farewell discourse, is the word about peace. If you look in John 20, when he's back with his disciples for the first time after his resurrection, you know what he says first. It's the very first word he says to them.
Peace be with you.
Peace be with you. Jesus, in that moment, if you just look at it in a smaller snapshot, it's like you don't understand that peace can be beyond circumstances. You think that death is annihilation. I'm telling you, death is transformation. Can't understand all of that, but peace I give you. And then when he's alive again, resurrected, God raises him up. His last words are words of peace. His first words are words of peace. Peace be with you. We don't know we don't know what that's like until it's our turn, right? But what we know from Jesus is that Jesus trusts, and that's really what it comes down to. Like, he surrenders, right?
Yeah.
He rests in the mercy of God, and trusts that that as he surrenders his life, there'll be more life. And he comes back and he's like, I can only tell you this, peace.
Yeah.
You know? So it belongs in the Christmas story. The angels sing about it. Zechariah talks about it. But it's not a starlit night that brings peace. It's not the absence of. It's the presence of.
Yeah. I don't know. First off, sorry, there's a lot of happening. Thank you. I'll start there.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, because one, I love the story of Zechariah, Elizabeth, and John, and I think it's so important to mention like their roles, not only when we talk about the gospel in general, but also the nativity, because I think they're important. But man, sorry, I'm like still reeling from like you think death is annihilation when it's actually transformation. Whew, that was weird. But I guess that does kind of leave me with a question of like the noun form of peace and then the verb form of peace, right? Because if we're talking about like peace being an addition to a situation, right? It is the presence of Christ in a place. What does that mean for when Christ says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," right? What do you think that is the call on Christians to be or to live out? Like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a big long answer to that. The short answer is to live in the confidence that God's got this. The peacemaker part is active. Well, God, like we don't have to just. That's why I love the words of Zechariah. Like, he, Jesus, will guide our feet in the way of peace. Like, there's some work for us to do.
Yeah.
And part of that work is to embody the way of Jesus, to move through the world with love and the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, to move through the world that way.
You and a lot of pastors we've had on have it memorized, and it blows my mind. Do you know the song too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's usually how they memorize it.
It's probably from NYF back in back in the day when we would sing that. But the peacemaking is not okay. So now we're going to do forgiveness. That's one thing. Now we're going to do love. That's another. Now we're going to do peace. That's another. Now we're going to do justice. That's another. Peace. This is it is living out the way of Jesus.
Yeah. Which I think is an important reminder every Christmas. It's a weird kind of juxtaposition where we see Christ as like the ultimate Prince of Peace, right? That he is coming into the world to bring peace. And as I mentioned before in one of the earlier podcasts, Advent also is to remember that Christ will come back and bring peace. But the juxtaposition part is that, he is going to do that, and yet we are also supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. And it feels very futile to try and do what Jesus is going to do. You know what I'm saying? But we're still called to do it. And I think that reminds me of To Kill a Mockingbird when Scout asks her dad, like, why are you even going to take the trial? And he's like, well, courage is knowing that you lost the fight before you even started, but you fight anyway because that's what you need to do. You know, it's this understanding that like we will try and we will hope in peace and we will be peaceful because in the end it will work out. But I don't know. It's just interesting to think about it in the noun form and the verb form, kind of like this, what Christ's role in it and then our partaking in it is interesting.
And I think that, you think about Paul in Philippians, like that, the letter is sort of the rejoice, joy, rejoice, like that's the letter of rejoicing. But he speaks about peace that passes understanding. Mm-hmm. And again, I keep coming back to it's not something that you can reach and take. It's something you have to rest in and know. Mm-hmm. Because he writes Philippians from a jail cell, right? Yeah. And so he prays that they will, have a peace that passes understanding. John, I'm not sure in your work of ministry if you've had the ability to be with people who've come to the end of their time in history and begin their time in eternity. Your constituents look a little different than the average
very
church.
Little experience there.
I marvel at the fact that people can be sad and worried and peaceful at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes from a resting, a knowing, like a dropping down into a deeper truth that whether you're the person who's letting go of life or whether you're the person holding the hand of the one you love who's letting go of life, mm-hmm. It is a remarkable thing to be able to feel sadness and worry and peace. But I've been in rooms, many, many rooms, where that resting, knowing, it's not the absence of pain, it's the presence of love.
Yeah. So, we agree that peace is important.
Right.
And it's an important part of this season, right? And it's an important part of Christ and who He's called His people to be and to do, right? So, thinking about the practicality of it, what can we do in this special season? And this is a season where we can do things that you don't get to do often. What can we do in this season to either cultivate some peace for ourselves, right? Finding some space for centering and for focusing and surrendering, or what can we do to do the verb form of peace, right? What can we do to bring peace out into the world? What are some practical ways that we can do in this season?
I think I keep coming back to resting, because and it's not so much quiet. I mean, you can take a walk and rest in God. You can hop on your bike and rest in God. So I wonder if to kind of be grounded or to get your bearings, if life at home is sticky or messy or conflictual or any of that, to find space to, whether it's you're walking the dog or whether it's you're riding your bike or you're just going to go down and see a friend, like in your car, there is a sense in which your identity, you're resting in in your identity beyond your circumstances. You just find your place. The other thing I really like, and I'm a person that does some 12-step work, so I love the fact that whether you are in a 12-step group that's working, Al-Anon or AA, or whether you're on the side of folks who have contributed, kept people maybe in a habit by your own helping, which is the sort of the codependent part of a 12-step. Whatever side of that you're on, I don't know if this makes any sense at all.
No, it's
But
having
I would
Okay.
explain what the 12 step
Okay.
is just real quick for just anyone who isn't familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any 12-step program are programs for, like, steps for healing and recovery if there's any sort of addiction that's part of your story. So, sometimes it's a chemical dependency, sometimes it's it can be all kinds of things, from chemical to workaholism to shopping, or whatever is your escape, right? And for people who love people who have an addiction, then often there's a supportive role that they unknowingly play because they're trying to help, but helping is not helpful. You know, and so it's almost a rescuer role, like, you're going down the wrong path, let me help you. And you can't live somebody else's life for them.
Right.
So 12-step work is work that begins with acknowledging that you're not in control, right? Like, you're not in control of somebody else, or maybe you're not in control because life is messy because of the choices you've made with any sort of dependency. Anyway, so I have people in my life, people in the church, people in my life that have different struggles, and I love them, and I want to help, but not be too helpful. All right?
Yeah.
I want to help in the right ways. So
Yeah.
I do my own 12-step work for that reason, but I say all of that to say that part of the language of AA or Al-Anon or any of the other 12-step work is this portion of the Niebuhr prayer. It's called the Serenity Prayer. God, help me to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And so sometimes if you're home or you're in a situation where it's messy, there are things you can't change. You can't change if your parents fight. You can't change if your sibling is obnoxious. You can't change if your uncle, like, won't stop talking about politics. I mean, you can't, there are things you can't change. God, grant me the serenity except the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can, which are mostly within yourself. And then the wisdom to know the difference. And something about that, I think, grounds us again, too.
Wow.
I
I
like
love
that.
that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'll just say that I think to offer peace more effectively does require us to be more empathetic, right? And to understand where people are coming from, to see where the conflict is, right? Because when we talk about, like, trying to be a peacemaker, I know a lot of people who, like, just try to, like, shove peace down people's throats, and it's like, well, no, like, they have feelings, and they're coming from a place of deep belief or passion or hurt or whatever it may be, and I also find that this season of the year, and we've kind of talked about this, or we will talk about this, about, like, how this season can be a difficult season for some people, and it can bring out some things in people that, maybe causes them to be less pleasant or less peaceful. I found creating more space in this holiday season to listen more is something that I try to do. And I found that does create more peace in most situations instead of me speaking, especially, like, as, like, the pastor of the family, like they're just going to assume that I'm going to pull up there and pull the Jesus card and, guilt trip them or whatever. And it's always like, I'm not here to do any of that. Like, if you want to tell me what's going on, I'm here to listen, and that's all I'm going to do. So I think listening is a good way to bring peace, because sometimes people just need to say it.
Yeah.
And then they have that peace.
Right. Well, they feel heard.
Yeah.
Right. They feel seen. You probably know this, but as you go around the Advent wreath, with hope and peace and joy and love, these things you're going to be talking about, right? These are the marks of the 4 weeks of Advent, and they mostly show up on the Advent wreath when you light an extra candle as you move through the 4 weeks of that anticipatory celebration of Christ's birth. If you think about the origin of the Advent wreath, its earliest origin was that it was a wheel off a wagon. So think with me about this. So after the fall harvest was all brought in, food stored, the meat curing, all of that, then the winter was a chance for the ground to renew. You did plant in the winter.
Yeah.
You let it be nourished so that it could grow again, and they pulled a wheel off the wagon because it was a time to be more still, and the wheel on the wagon became what they festooned with the greenery and put candles in, and so it was probably a practical thing at first, like a decorative thing, but it really does point to this different rhythm, right? Spring has a rhythm, summer has a rhythm, fall has a rhythm, and in our part of the world, it is time for the ground to lie fallow so it can be nourished. It's a time for us to create some space in our own life so we can be nourished. And so just the very wheel of the wagon, that meant you weren't running, like it was a different time. And, as the world grew darker physically, less and less light in any given day, they lit more and more candles and had a different rhythm of their life.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Wow. Thank you for that. I did not know that.
Oh.
I think that's a good note to end on.
Okay.
Yeah, personally.
Oh.
All right. So if you guys don't have anything else, that's what's up with peace. If the listeners, if you guys have any questions, you can reach us at our email, which is wuw@wesleychs.org. And also, don't forget to like or follow on whatever platform you're listening to.
And if you want to learn more about the Wesley Foundation, you can go to our website, which is wesleychs.org, or you can check us out on Instagram and Facebook. And also, if you want to get in touch with Pastor Susan, we'd love to connect you and the good things that are happening over at Bethel. So, with that being said, let's go to God in prayer. God, thank you for this opportunity to talk about your peace that you give to us. Help us to be the addition of peace in whatever rooms we are in. Help us to have the wisdom to accept the things that we cannot change, and also identify the things that we can. God, help us to reflect on this concept that Christ is the Prince of Peace and is calling us and guiding us to peace and in peace. And just help us to bring peace to others. Help us to find some time to slow down. Help us to surrender, to focus, and to rest. So that way we can experience and be guided and grow in the peace that surpasses all understanding. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Catch you next week.